Hi, everyone, and welcome to ByWater Solutions' first podcast. With us today, we have Joann Ransom. Welcome, Joann. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, thank you so much. So my name is Joann Ransom. I'm from Horowhenua, which is in Levin, a small town in Levin. And we were I was part of the original development crew for Koha 1.0 back in 1999. I'm at the tail end of a 3-month world tour, and I've been visiting various parts of the Koha community around the globe, chiefly the Northern Hemisphere, to be honest, but meeting with libraries and visiting librarians and vendors and developers, and it's been a really terrific thing to do.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to launch into a few questions that we've received from not only ByWater's internal staff, but also our Koha customers.
Mm-hmm.
So the first question we're going to ask is, what was the determining factor in deciding to create your own ILS rather than using an already existing proprietary system, when you were doing this evaluation down in New Zealand?
Okay, so it was 1999 and we were facing a Y2K bug. We're quite a small population, so as a district, 30,000 ratepayers, so we don't have a big rating base. We went through an RFP process and did the traditional path and got a stack of proposals back and found that none of them were exactly right for us. They were all too expensive, not just for the LMS, but for the telecommunications costs around that. So we had a real problem. We just couldn't afford them. And also none of them did what we wanted. Most of them were too big. We're a small rural New Zealand town. We showed them to Chris Cormack, and who was one of a developer that we've been using for some time, and Rachel Hamilton Williams, who was a web designer, and Simon Blake, who was a network engineer. And they observed that none of them used World Wide Web technologies. And we thought the internet was probably the way going forward. So we were interested in that. And then Chris wondered, how hard would it be to write a library management system, using www protocols? And we reckoned we could do it fairly cheaply and quite quickly. And so we did. So that was really the driver. We couldn't afford anything else. And none of them were focusing towards the future with internet. Yeah.
What would you say some of the major challenges were? And, did you get pushback from government or the community at all?
So everyone says, don't write your own software, don't write your own LMS. That's a core piece of advice. We were kind of unique in New Zealand in that we were a charitable trust. So we were a trust that had been set up by our local council with a board to deliver library services in the district. But we had a fixed budget. We could go back to council for extraordinary costs. So we could go back once for a chunk of cash for this big software upgrade, but we weren't to keep going back. The board at the time was comprised of businessmen and really passionate about libraries, but also in a position that they would make pragmatic decisions. On balance, this was, having balanced the risk, they were quite comfortable about going forward with developing our software. The biggest challenge was time. We had 12 weeks. And that was a huge challenge. And we just had to push to do it. So the librarians' jobs were to describe how a library worked to Chris, and Chris would code it, send it back to us, we'd test it, see if it worked. If it did, we'd pass it over for the web design for Rachel to do the web pages. And if it didn't work, we'd send it back to Chris and he'd fix the code again and send it back to us. So hard and fast. That time was the real pressure. We had one day off in 3 months, and that was Christmas Day. So, and Chris was still coding at 9 o'clock in the morning on the 5th of January, and we went live at 10. So time. But we were still standing at noon, so we got away with it.
12 weeks is crazy. I mean, there are some features within Koha that take longer than 12 weeks to develop, let alone the entire ILS. That's nuts.
It was 1.0. It was small town library system, small town librarians. We only did what we needed. It was nothing like the Koha that you see today. It was just a starting point. There was no mark or anything. We just did what we could do. That was what we needed. So, you can't we didn't write what we've got now. It was very much a starting point.
Cool. What about your staff in the library? Did you get any pushback from them, or was the buy-in from day one?
So we had a library manager who was an extraordinary leader, and we all knew that she was innovative and she took risks. She was a leader, and we completely trusted Rosalie Blake. And she'd made this choice. And I remember talking to her because I was her deputy, saying, look, are you sure you want to do this? You're coming up to the end of your career. It's been a stellar career. If this goes wrong, is this, what you want to end on? And she was absolutely sure that this was the right way to go forward. And I felt once she had kind of, my role was to question her, when you always want someone who's your deputy to challenge you and to test. And she convinced me that, no, she was absolutely sure this was the right way forward. And then from that moment on, completely sold. And it's kind of exciting. Creating something new is really exciting. And it was stimulating and challenging. And, we're librarians. This is our profession. So we're using our professional tools, and we're deciding and thinking. We created, the Ferber 1.0. We had a Ferber arrangement. Now, it broke when Mark came in, but, we created that. So professionally, really exciting, amazing thing to be involved in. No kickback from staff. We had a problem. We needed a new system. This was the answer. This was the track we were on. We trusted the leader and went for it.
Amazing. So at what point in Koha's almost 2 decades did you see it changing from just small and, local to like this international, huge, system?
It's a movement, love. We call it a movement now, okay? Really, we always joked right from the start, we want to take over the world. And we laugh about it. We're going to take over the world. Koha's going to rule the world. The one LMS to rule them all, So we joke about it. But hey, that's happening. So, we always kind of joked and hoped that might happen because it made sense to us to not have a proprietary system, to have a system that we create together and that we share together and that we collaborate on together. That's what librarians do. We work together and we give stuff away. So it's a perfect fit for the profession. Incredibly early on. So we released the code, and as the sun came up around the globe, you could see it being downloaded. So really early on, we knew we'd struck a chord. Wow. So, within that month, we had 30 people on a discussion list, and then there were 86 downloads of code. We had a translation happening really early from Poland. We had students in America writing enhancements to the system. So, this kind of, it got picked up really quickly. In terms of scale, in terms of, really big, not just small systems, Steve Tonneson in British Columbia had it in a school system really early, like 2000, I think, with 6 or 7 libraries. So it went very quickly from just our little one to a 7 library consortia. And just, leaps and bounds, really. So we, I hope this comes up later, but we kind of developed 1.0. It was exactly what we wanted. It was finely tuned to the librarians' needs. It's a small town library in New Zealand. And then we made a mistake in that we didn't stay involved enough. So we did our bit, we made it free, and then we kind of just carried on doing our work. And for about 10 years, I guess, we weren't engaged. And we'll talk about that later if you'd like. But so we kind of, when we came back into it, it was like, whoa, it's huge. So
that's great. That kind of ties into our next question, which is a 2-parter. What, if anything, surprised you the most about the Koha project, from the get-go? And is there anything that you would change about the way you did things if you could go back?
If I could have my time again, I would have stayed involved right from the start. So the biggest upgrade that came in early was the introduction of Mark, and Mark completely broke our Ferber arrangement. And we loved our Ferber arrangement, and our patrons loved it. So our work was broken. So we just stayed on Koha. But of course, we became isolated on a fork, and we truly were on a fork for 10 years because Koha moved on beyond us. It went past us and carried on and got better and better and from strength to strength. It did mean that when we wanted to upgrade, when it was kind of patently obvious that Koha was this incredible LMS that we wanted to have, it wasn't a straightforward process to migrate from what we were on to this new baby. And it was like a whole new software system, and really painful. And, we lost a lot of the features that we really loved. And, we mourned those, but actually we gained so much more. So I guess on hindsight, we should have stayed with the project, defended our decisions, explained what we were doing, been involved, much, much more. And then advice going forward is always stay within 1 or 2 releases or patches of current, just because it makes it a seamless, painless exercise to upgrade.
Great.
So here in the US, we still kind of have this fear of libraries moving to open source, primarily because of the misconceptions behind the need for internal IT staff. What would you say to these librarians to kind of help them get past that fear? And how do you think as a community we can overcome some of these fears, obstacles that these libraries have about moving to open source?
I don't know what a full-time Koha IT person would do. I mean, Koha is really stable. Once you're up and running, it doesn't break. It doesn't go wrong, There's a bit of work doing the conversion, but that's work that needs librarians' heads. How are we going to arrange our collection so that it suits our community? That's librarians' work. For years, we hosted our own server on site, and we had IT support provided by a vendor. And then in the last 3 years, we got our server needed replaced, and we thought, we don't need it on site. So now it's hosted by a vendor. So I don't know, maybe proprietary library systems are high needs or something and need IT staff on staff, but certainly that's not our experience with Koha. And I don't know of anyone that has a full-time Koha IT support crew. Actually, no, I do. There are places who want full support, who want to have their own IT team in-house, providing and supporting Koha, and they don't use vendors at all. So for us, it makes sense that we buy in the services from a vendor as and when we need it. And you can either do that with a full support contract or just on a pay per hour for time used. But I know that there are some libraries that prefer to do it entirely themselves, and that's fine. There's always maintenance to do on a whole big system, I guess. But yeah, no, you don't need a dedicated full-time IT Koha person. I don't know what they do.
Is that misconception, does that exist in New Zealand at all, or is that just a preposterous idea that it would be any different than using any other ILS system that's supported by a vendor?
The biggest problem in New Zealand is there's some belief that Koha's not big enough. Now, we're a country of 4 million people, okay? There are cities twice that size, 3 times that size, 4 times that size. Koha is run by whole states, whole countries. So, there's this crazy misinformation in New Zealand that Koha isn't kind of big enough. But I think it's more cultural cringe, really. If it was developed locally, it can't be as cool as something developed in America or Europe or something. I don't understand it at all. So I don't want to talk about New Zealand because it's kind of really disappointing that everywhere you go in the world, people think, "Whoa, yeah, Koha, New Zealand, you must all be using it." And our government departments are all using it, but our public libraries aren't. There's kind of 8 of us who are using it and love it and just don't understand why other library systems are choosing to pay really huge amounts of money for a library management system that actually is nowhere near as good. Mm-hmm. Is missing so many features that we've had in Koha for years, and we just count as absolutely basic core features. So yeah. So now let's put New Zealand aside because.
Well, it sounds like you have a similar problem there as we have here, just for there's different misconceptions that exist. Robustness isn't as much of a fear here. It's just there's a feeling as though if you use open source, then, your IT needs are going to go through the roof because I don't even know why. Like, I can't even, put my finger on it, but it's there and it's prevalent. And the biggest thing we get is we can't use Koha because we don't have a big enough IT staff.
Well, yeah, you turn Koha on, you make it work, and then you walk away.
Right. It's web-based, so you actually need less of an IT staff. But
Absolutely. And you can have a vendor from anywhere in the world. Like, you can change if you don't like, and I've been saying this as I'm going around, it's like you're buying a service from your vendor. You're not buying a product. You can have the product for free, just download it, it's yours. So you're buying a service. If you don't like the service you're getting from your vendor, then go to another vendor. Like, it's no problem. You don't have to change your LMS to change your support provider. And you just don't need that much support. You can if you want it, but you don't need it. Many of us just turn it on and run it.
Great. So this next question, oh wait, I just asked the last one. Sorry. Go ahead, Jess.
Okay. So, was there any specific ILS that you looked at when you were working on, coming up with Koha and designing what you wanted in an ILS? If not, what was the decision to not look at another ILS and kind of just start from scratch?
So we were running a DOS-based system, a 12-year-old DOS-based system called Catalyst. And it was developed by a company in Christchurch, New Zealand. And it was really good. It was rock solid. For 12 years, it did everything we needed, but it was not going to survive Y2K. And the company had been purchased by an Asian company, and the service levels had changed. And, we needed to move to something else. The deal breaker, it was just that we couldn't afford anything else. It was pure economics. There were all sorts of systems available, but they were all really big and highfalutin, and just like we couldn't afford them. Not just the system, but the telecommunications. So we had a system at the time where for 3 cents a day you could talk as long as you like in a phone call. So we'd dial up over copper lines every morning to our branch libraries over a modem. We'd operate the library all day long for 3 cents, and then we'd hang up. So our telecoms costs were really cheap. All of these new systems required a leased line, a T1 line, or a frame relay system, and the telecoms costs were going to kill us ongoing on top of the cost of the software. So that really, we really didn't have many choices. We couldn't afford what was on offer.
Cool. So this is a kind of a long one. So Koha's vitality and growth has mirrored that of other successful technology projects from the late 90s and early 2000s, like Facebook, Google, Twitter. There were a ton of them. What's unique about Koha is that it lasted. Many of the companies that came out during that time did not. Yahoo and Vine Video are two examples most recently. What factors do you think have led to Koha being a success in an ever-changing technology landscape? And how can it continue to be so?
Koha would be just a bunch of code without a community. So the defining difference with Koha is that you're part of a movement. It's not a company. There's no Koha company, Koha organization, Koha board. It's the people it's the Koha community around the globe over the last 2 decades who have nurtured and grown and developed Koha. There was a really ugly period in our history, the PTFS Libline episode, and we survived that because we couldn't be bought. We couldn't be shut down. We couldn't be taken over because nobody owns it. Nobody is Koha. It's a movement, and it belongs to all of us around the world. I guess on paper the Koha community shouldn't work as effectively as it does because it's kind of a bit too loose, but it works incredibly well. And I think it's that diversity and the many people involved, and the fact that it's not dependent on individuals. Chris Cormack said to me just a couple of months ago, I could stop participating in Koha right now and it wouldn't make an iota of difference. Koha is absolutely such a strong movement. because it's not about individuals. It's about the collective and it's about the community. So I absolutely think that's the strength that's brought it to where it is today, and that's its future is secured because of this community. 88 active developers working on Koha last month. It's bigger than any proprietary competitor. That's a huge amount of brain power, man hours. It's a huge amount of investment that's going into the software, and that's community.
That's great. And I love the idea of, the LibLime issue that you brought up. I think that was one of the defining moments in the community, because if there were a dominant Koha company at the time, it was them. And when they went off the reservation, a lot of people were worried that there would be huge repercussions, but there weren't. I mean, there was some drama, but it was a hiccup at most, and other companies stepped into their place and did what they should have done. So that was a great point, and I think that shows the strength of the community. I'm almost glad it happened, because it's proof that it truly is a vendor independent movement.
Well, looking back now, of course, at the time it was really brutal and it was really horrible. It was like, how could they? What? Because LibLime were a huge, trusted, valued member of the community. But I guess, anyone can, if a check's big enough, then all sorts of things can happen. But yeah, on hindsight, it really did pull the Koha community together and showed us that we weren't dependent on any one player.
So we have a question that came in. Someone asked if you could speak to the meaning of Koha. How do you feel about Koha?
So Koha is the name of our software, and it's our gift to the world. And Koha comes from the Maori language, which is our Indigenous people of New Zealand, and it means a gift, but it's a gift with strings. So it has connotations of generosity as well. So if you go to an event, any event, a funeral, a wedding, a meeting, you would take a koha with you. And it might be a local speciality. So it might be fresh fish, or it might be a truckload of vegetables. It might just be a big check, but you always take a koha with you, and it's an amount that you're able to afford, and that you choose the extent of the koha, and you give as much as you can afford, and nobody will judge you for. You can take nothing, then you take nothing, and that's fine. Come in, enjoy, and then when people come to you, they will do the same thing. So there's a level of it's a contribution that, and it shares the cost of holding an event. It shares the cost of developing koha among us all. So it was a perfect fit. We would produce what we could and make it available for everybody. They could have it, download it, improve it, make it better, change it. But the deal was they then shared those enhancements for everybody else to benefit from, and that just carries on. So it was exactly the right word for what we, for our lovely gift to the world.
And thank you very much for giving it. So during your 3-month tour, what has surprised you the most, or can you maybe call out some highlights from your travels and visiting Koha users throughout the globe?
Yes, I wanted to go on my tour to show my gratitude to the Koha community, because we created something really little and small for us and set it free. And it needed a community to embrace it and nurture and grow our little seed into something wonderful. And I feel so grateful to the world for that. So grateful. And so I had 3 months from leaving one job and starting another. And I really wanted this opportunity to go and meet people and communities who have done that for us, done it for themselves, but done it for us as well. So I went with gratitude in my heart. And what I hadn't expected was this reciprocal gratitude back, that people were just so grateful that we did it, and so pleased that I came to visit, and so generous in their hospitality. And I thought it was like all about me. I was getting something out of this. And I realized really quickly, no, it's absolutely two-sided, that people were really so proud and pleased that I'd come to visit. And sometimes it was the universities in Malaysia were incredible. They're so generous and so hospitable. And I walked into a library in India, and this lady said, "Look, I'm the world's biggest Koha fan." Talking to another public library in India, and the board were beaming and so proud of their library and that they've got Koha, and so grateful that we made it available so that any community that wants to have a library and a library management system can. So I hadn't expected that level of, we were mutually grateful, and yeah, that surprised me. I thought it was all about me getting something out of it, but it's kind of worked both ways.
I'm giving you a virtual hug.
Yeah. I'm a hugger, and I've had so many hugs. Yeah. I think I've startled a few people, but that's just who I am,
Me too. Okay, so last question. Where do you see Koha going in the future?
From strength to strength. I think, this has been, I need a minute to think actually. So in the terms of thinking about Koha going forward, I think it's just starting to reach a critical mass. I think it's just about to start becoming a major player in Asia in particular. And certainly talking to my hosts in Malaysia, talking to my hosts in India, I can see that it's really going to become very big in those countries. But also, through Europe, in Berlin, in Czech Republic, in Vienna, it's becoming a really obvious choice because it is a fully featured, scalable LMS. The universities love it. Public libraries love it. You can operate it to any level that you like. You can have a really basic, simple install and only use some modules, or you can go all out and use everything. So I think it's just starting. I don't think it's anywhere near a peak yet. I think it's just starting to really take off. And I think the growth that we've had till now is just part of the ramp. I think we're just kind of approaching a starting line, to be honest. And that kind of has, we need to think about that. Is the existing way that the community organises itself, is that going to be strong enough and robust enough going forward? Because I know in almost every country I went to, people were talking about vendors and developers and libraries that are not adhering to the philosophy. The Koha concept, the open source sharing concept, where they're taking the code, they're doing enhancements for clients, or clients are paying developers to do enhancements and they're not sharing it back. Or major development work is being thought of in an office in a country somewhere without going through the community process, whereby, you issue an RFC, you signal to the community, look, we're looking at doing some work on this, and then other interested developers can join with you. We work out a collective way forward, and that work is part of the main thread. I'm a little nervous because I see everywhere I have gone, I can see forks of Koha, which are not unhealthy in themselves, but there's a real issue with that. If libraries think they're buying open source, and they're buying Koha because it is open source, and they're getting support, and if they don't insist that their work is done in concert with the global Koha community, then the very next upgrade, their work's all lost. And it's a false economy. And actually, as a library manager spending ratepayer money, that's really, that's not cool. So I'm kind of aware of those issues. And this wasn't just in one or two countries. This was almost everywhere I went. There were people saying, this is really bad for Koha. It is a global movement. We need each of these development communities to be involved because that makes us all stronger. And so I don't know the answers. And maybe at the end of this tour, all I'm going to come up with is a list of observations, maybe some questions. And as a community, we need to think about how we want to go forward with that. I'm also aware that there's a whole lot of work that could be done that would benefit us all, that no one company or library can possibly fund. Things like marketing Koha. Everywhere I go, it's like, we want to be able to tell a story. What is the true story of Koha? What are the benefits? How does it stack up? Now, if we could have a toolkit of resources that anyone who wants to to get Koha can access, that's a resource that we could all be collaboratively funding because it benefits us all. Likewise, rewriting some of the underbelly code. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that you'll get no actual immediate benefit from, but we all would benefit from it. So we need to be co-funding that kind of work. So I'm thinking about that going forward. Some of the tasks in Koha are huge. Being a release manager, for instance, it will be really incredible if whoever got that role was funded a 0.5 FTE, for instance, because the whole community needs that work to be done. We all benefit from it, but there are very few vendors around the globe who could actually afford to take that amount of staffing hours out of production. So that needs to be done, but largely as volunteers. And this work's worthy. It's worthy of being funded. It needs someone operating at a fairly high level. It deserves to be a paid position. So how do we coordinate that? Because Koha is going to only ever need more of that work. So those are the issues starting to come forward, and I think we might need to start having discussions about, so what happens if this does suddenly double in the next couple of years? Is the current way that the community works going to cope with that? Is this the optimum model, or is there a different model that maybe we should consider? So.
That's great.
I talk a lot, sorry. You can get it.
Love it.
Yeah. This has just been wonderful, Joann. Thank you so much for joining us and kind of sharing your experiences and some stories of the past, several years. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for watching and listening today. Have a great day.